Hi, everyone. Good to have you here. Get comfy, adjust your pillow, and let the day slip away. Breathe in, breathe out. Tonight, we travel back before nations, before oceans, before maps existed. A single vast landmass stretched from horizon to horizon. Pangaea. Mountains rose, forests sprawled, deserts seemed endless. Life thrived: tiny mammals, mighty reptiles, buzzing insects. Imagine standing there, the horizon blurring with heat or deep green forests. This was Earth, raw and unfinished, yet part of our story. Pangaea broke, shaping continents we know today. Settle in. Let my voice guide you. One world, one beginning. But before all that, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's dive deep. So, what exactly was Pangaea? It wasn't just a continent. It was the continent, the one, the only, all the land you know today. North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, even Antarctica, once locked together as a single giant piece. That was Pangaea, a supercontinent, the greatest gathering of land in Earth's history. It formed about 335 million years ago, deep in the late Paleozoic era, the age of amphibians, the age of giant forests and coal swamps. By then, the Earth had already seen continents crash together before, but this time they fused into something larger than ever, a landmass so massive that it stretched almost pole to pole. An Earth gathered into one. For millions of years, Pangaea stood unbroken. A single world, mountains rising from its collisions. Oceans are shrinking into smaller seas. Life is spreading across the land without barriers. But it didn't last forever. No continent does. Around 175 million years ago, Pangaea began to break apart. Slowly, silently, cracks are opening in the crust. Rifts filled with seas. The Atlantic Ocean, just a newborn at first, was creeping into the world. And from that slow unravelling came the Earth we know today. The continents are drifting. The oceans are widening. The familiar globe is taking shape. So, Pangaea lived for about 160 million years. Born in the Paleozoic, thriving in the Triassic, fracturing in the Jurassic. Longer than the age of humans. Longer than the rise and fall of the great ice sheets. Longer even than the reign of the dinosaurs, but still only a chapter in Earth's larger story. Before Pangaea, there were others, supercontinents like Rodinia, and, after Pangaea, there will be more. The continents we know are still drifting, still moving, still searching for the next embrace. Yet Pangaea remains the most famous, the one we imagine when we look at maps, the one whose name echoes like myth. The word itself comes from Greek, pan, meaning all, Gaia, meaning earth, all earth, one world, and that is exactly what it was. One earth beneath a single sky. Imagine looking at a globe of Pangaea, no scattered continents, no great oceans divide them, just one vast continent, surrounded by a single, endless sea, Panthalassa. It makes today's Earth feel small, fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be pushed back together. So, when we speak of Pangaea, we're speaking of unity, of beginnings, of a planet that gathered itself into one. It was never permanent, but it shaped everything that came after. The land, the oceans, the climate, the lives that walked and crawled and swam. And in a way, Pangaea is still here, in the rocks beneath your feet, in the fossils scattered across continents, in the drifting of land that never really stopped. That was Pangaea, the world, once one. Pangaea didn't just appear, it was built, slowly, violently, over hundreds of millions of years. The story begins deep in time. The continents we know today didn't exist yet. Instead, there were smaller landmasses, drifting, shifting, riding the restless skin of Earth, tectonic plates, the great puzzle pieces of the planet, always in motion. always colliding, always tearing apart. It was these collisions that gave birth to Pangaea. Step by step, land drew closer. South America and Africa are inching toward one another. North America and Europe are sliding closer together. Pieces of Asia, fragments of Gondwana, all converging. All are pulled by the deep forces of the mantle below. When continents meet, they don't just kiss and settle. They crash, they grind, they fold, and the land buckles upward. Mountains rise. That's why the Appalachian Mountains exist today. They were born when North America smashed into Africa. A scar of Pangaea, still standing, still whispering the story of that union. The same happened across the globe. Ranges soared, earthquakes rumbled, volcanoes bled fire at the seams. It was not a peaceful gathering. It was violent. It was raw, but it was also creation. By around 335 million years ago, the collisions had done their work. The puzzle pieces locked together. One land, one world, Pangaea. It stretched from the northern ice to the southern seas, from what would one day be Canada down to Antarctica, from the western deserts to the far coasts of Asia. A single giant, a supercontinent. The oceans shrank in its shadow. The Rake Ocean closed. The Iapetus vanished, all swallowed up as the land fused. And beyond the shores of Pangaea spread another giant, Panthalassa, the global ocean, wrapping the supercontinent in endless blue. Life was caught in the middle of this collision. Forests crushed beneath rising mountains. Swamps drained as rivers shifted course. Animals forced to move, to adapt, to find new homes in the changing land. But life endured, and soon it would spread across this vast new stage, unbroken, unchallenged by seas. The birth of Pangaea was the earth reshaping itself, a slow sculptor, a restless artist, carving mountains, merging rivers, drawing a single continent from scattered fragments. It was the world gathering itself into one, not gentle, but powerful, final. And though it would not last forever, its creation set the stage for everything that followed. Dinosaurs, mammals, us, all born in the world. Pangaea was left behind. Pangaea was not gentle. It was vast. It was extreme, a land of opposites. Imagine standing in its heart. No ocean breeze, no soft rainfall, just endless land stretching to every horizon. The interior was dry, scorching in the day, freezing at night. Deserts spread wide across the middle of the supercontinent, dunes rolling like waves of stone. The air is thick with heat, water scarce. Life is struggling to hold on. This was the price of size. The oceans were far away. Moisture rarely reached so deep inland. The skies above stayed clear. The rains rarely came, but travel outward toward the edges, and the world changed. The coasts told a different story. Here the ocean ruled. Winds swept in from Panthalassa. Clouds formed. Rain fell. Forests grew thick and green. Conifers stretched high. Ferns carpeted the ground. Swamps thrived, feeding rivers that wound back into the land. These coastal strips were alive. They were lush. They were full of food and shelter. A stark contrast to the barren centre. Pangaea's extremes shaped everything. Animals in the deserts grew tough, built for heat, built for distance, able to survive with little water. Along the coasts, creatures had an abundance. They could grow larger, more diverse. The forests gave them cover. The rivers gave them life. This pattern, scarcity in the middle, richness on the edges, was the rhythm of Pangaea. It dictated where species thrived. It guided evolution. It created winners and losers. The climate, too, swung between extremes. Hot summers burned the land. Winters brought sudden chills. The lack of oceans in the centre made seasons brutal. Life had to adapt quickly, or it vanished. Rivers helped. They carried water from the rain outward. They carved valleys through the rock. They fed patches of green in the middle of the desert, little lifelines across the vast interior. But still, most of Pangea's heart remained empty, a desert continent inside a living ring. If you could fly above it, you'd see it clearly. Brown and yellow dominate the center. Green forests hug the coasts. Blue ocean surrounding it all. A planet of extremes. And this imbalance mattered. It created corridors of survival. It drove migration. It shaped the very path of evolution. In the harsh deserts, only the toughest survived. In the wet coasts, diversity flourished. Together, these extremes built the foundation of life on Pangaea. The supercontinent was more than just one land. It was a test of endurance, of adaptation, of survival, and through it all, Earth itself was experimenting, pushing boundaries, forging new forms of life, one extreme at a time. Pangaea's size made it strange. Its climate was no simple pattern. It was a puzzle, a mix of chaos and extremes. Start with the winds. Over Panthalassa, the great ocean, winds gathered. They swept toward the coastlines, carrying rain, carrying storms, feeding forests and rivers. But those same winds rarely reached the center. The heart of Pangaea stayed dry. Moisture fell short. Clouds thinned. The sky burned clear and empty, and deserts spread across the middle. The monsoons were fierce. In summer, hot land pulled in ocean air. The rains poured down on the coastal belts. Thunder cracked. Lightning flashed. Floods rushed through valleys. But in winter, the winds reversed. Cold air blew outward. Dry, sharp, relentless. The coasts cooled. The center froze. Season after season, the cycle repeated. This back and forth shaped life. Creatures near the coasts adapted to floods and storms. Plants clung to riverbanks, ready for sudden rains. But far inland, the story was different. Here, drought ruled. Years could pass with barely a drop of water. The extremes were brutal. Scorching summers, bitter winters. In the core, there was no ocean to soften the blow. Heat rose high. Cold sank deep. Every year was a test. Storms marked the edges. Drought marked the middle, and life had to play by those rules. Some animals migrated, following the rains, moving between wet and dry zones. Others stayed put, surviving in the hardest ways, burrowing underground, sleeping through dry seasons, feeding quickly when water returned. Even plants had to adapt. Conifers on the coasts stood tall through storms. Seed ferns in the interior grew tough, withstanding long droughts. Some stored water in roots. Others dropped leaves in harsh seasons. The climate puzzle was relentless, but it was also opportunity. Different regions offered different challenges, and challenges created diversity. Every storm, every drought, every season shaped evolution's hand. Scientists today read the signs. Fossil soils show the drought. Riverbeds reveal the floods. Rock layers capture storms that raged and vanished millions of years ago. And the story is clear. Pangaea's climate was not one thing. It was many. Wet coasts, dry core, storms, monsoons, and deserts locked together in a rhythm. To live in this world meant bending to that rhythm, enduring its chaos, surviving its extremes. The climate puzzle of Pangaea was harsh, but it built resilience. It forced life to innovate, and it left its mark on everything that followed. Because in Earth's story, every storm, every drought, every shift in the wind leaves echoes that still reach us today. Step into Pangaea's forests, not small, not gentle, but vast and towering. The air carried resin and damp earth. Shadows stretched long beneath trees that reached the sky. These were the conifers, needled evergreens. Their tall trunks stood like pillars. Roots gripped rocky soil. They were survivors built for storms, fires, and long seasons. Conifers ruled the uplands. They could handle the thin soils and the dry winds. Their needles wasted little water. Their cones carried seeds safe from the harshest weather. Forest after forest, they stretched across hills and mountain slopes. But conifers were not alone. Seed ferns filled the lower ground. They looked like ferns, but they were more. They had seeds, tiny packages of life, tougher than spores. Seeds gave them an edge. They spread into drier zones. They could wait for the right season. And, when rain returned, they came alive again. Cycads grew thick in warmer regions, shorter than conifers, crowned with tough, feathery leaves. Their trunks were sturdy, their roots deep. They thrived in the sun and heat, slow-growing but steady, living fossils. Even today, their descendants still survive. Together, these plants built worlds, forests that shaped everything around them. They anchored soil, they softened climates, they made food for herbivores, and shelter for small creatures. Imagine it, a gorgonopsid predator moving in the shadows of conifer trunks, a herd of tusked herbivores grazing on seed ferns, insects buzzing in clouds around cycads. Every creature is tied to the green around them. Forests were engines. They pumped oxygen into the air. They locked carbon into wood and soil. They cooled the ground with shade. They drove the cycles of life. But these giants also faced fire. Resin-rich conifers burned hot when lightning struck. Fires cleared the land. But forests grew back. Ash fed the soil. New generations rose from the old. Forests shifted with the land. Near rivers, seed ferns grew thick and lush. On coasts, conifers braced against storms. In the drier interior, cycads clung to survival. Every zone had its giants. Every zone has its story. These forests were not silent. They hummed with life. Insects chewed leaves. Reptiles rustled in the undergrowth. Synapsids stalked trails through the trees. The green world shaped the living world. Scientists see the trace today. Fossil wood turned to stone. Leaves pressed into rock. Pollen grains are locked in sediments. Each is a snapshot of those ancient forests. They tell us one thing. Pangaea's forests were vast. They were powerful. They were alive. Forests of giants, conifers, seed ferns, cycads. Together, they covered a supercontinent. Together, they built ecosystems that lasted millions of years. Without them, there could be no animals, no insects swarming, no predators prowling, no survivors enduring. They were the foundation, the green heartbeat of Pangaea. Imagine rivers without end, not bounded by nations, not cut by oceans, but flowing across one world. That was Pangaea, a single landmass. Its rivers had no borders. They connected coasts, mountains, and deserts. Many began in the highlands. Snowmelt and rain carved torrents down rocky slopes. Water carried silt, minerals, and life into the lowlands. As streams joined, rivers grew. They broadened into sweeping channels. They wound through plains and forests, feeding everything. These rivers were the arteries of Pangaea. They stitched ecosystems together from one horizon to another, from the wettest forests to the driest heartlands. Along their banks, life thrived. Dense vegetation grew in fertile floodplains. Seed ferns and conifers lined the edges. Their roots held soil against erosion. Their fallen leaves enriched the ground. Insects filled the air. Amphibians hid in reeds and mud. Small reptiles darted between roots and shallow pools. Predators waited in the shadows. Prey gathered to drink. Rivers fed everything. Herbivores followed their paths. Predators followed the herbivores. Each migration is tied to the endless flow of water. Floods shaped the land. Monsoon rains swelled rivers beyond their banks. Floodwaters spread across the plains. They left behind layers of nutrient-rich silt, new soil, new growth, new life. These floods were both a gift and a danger. They could drown the land. They could erase trails and nests. But when they retreated, the earth bloomed again. In dry interiors, rivers were scarce. Some flowed only after rare storms. Ephemeral rivers, temporary lifelines. Pools formed in their wake. Animals came to drink. Tracks, pressed into mud, told the stories of survival. Not all rivers were gentle. Some carved canyons. Fast currents ripped through valleys. They carried rock and sand to the lowlands. They built alluvial fans. They left patterns of vanished channels etched in stone. Rivers were also highways, natural corridors of movement. A reptile in what is now South America could follow water north into what is now North America. Species spread across Pangaea. No seas stopped them. No borders blocked them. Life moved freely. Fossil records prove it. Matching sediments on continents now divided by oceans. The same river systems are preserved in Africa, North America, and Europe. Same footprints, same species, same flow. To stand by a Pangaean river was to see abundance. Herds crowd the shallows, predators lurking, insects buzzing, amphibians slipping into water. The sound of rushing flow blends with the calls of life. These rivers were more than water. They were the lifeblood of a supercontinent. Without them, Pangaea would have been barren. With them, it was alive. Rivers without borders. Arteries of one world, connecting mountains to coasts, forests to deserts, life to life. Follow the river. Life gathers here. Every bank, every bend, a stage for survival. Insects filled the skies above the floodplains. Buzzing clouds rising from reeds and shallow pools. Dragonflies with wingspans longer than your hand. Beetles scuttling across the wet soil. Termites are chewing through fallen logs. Their constant hum was the soundtrack of the rivers. Amphibians thrived in the shallows. Giant salamanders, frogs clinging to reeds. Creatures slip between water and land with ease. Their moist skin made them perfect river dwellers, but also fragile, dependent on steady water. One drought, and many vanished. Reptiles watched from the edges. Some small, hunting insects. Others are larger, waiting for bigger prey. Quick movements. Silent stalkers, camouflaged among roots and reeds. On the muddy banks, tracks told stories. Wide footprints of herbivores coming to drink. Delicate claw marks of reptiles. Drag trails of tails pulled through wet earth. Every track is a sign of life crossing paths. Predators knew this too. The rivers were feeding grounds, ambush sites. Silent hunters waited where water narrowed, lurking in the cover of vegetation. One misstep by prey could mean death. Imagine a thirsty herd of synapsids, cautious as they approached. Heads low, ears twitching, scanning the shadows, because danger always lingered at the water's edge. Insects fed amphibians. Amphibians feed on reptiles. Reptiles fed by larger hunters. The riverbank was a chain of hunger. Every bite, every struggle tied to the water. And yet it was also a place of abundance. Floods enriched the soil. Plants grew thick. Animals gathered to eat, drink, and survive. The rivers became highways of life, meeting points for predator and prey alike. When monsoons came, the story shifted. Water swelled over the banks. New pools formed. Fresh feeding grounds appeared. Insects multiplied in the damp air. Amphibians croaked in chorus. Predators followed the surge of life. Even the smallest streams mattered. Ephemeral rivers in the interior deserts carried hope. After rare storms, pools lingered in dry beds. Animals rushed to drink. Predators waited, knowing the herds would come. For some, these waters were the difference between life and death. Life along the rivers was not peaceful. It was tense. Every sound in the reeds could be a danger. Every ripple could be a hunter's move. But it was also necessary. Without the rivers, life would have withered. In Pangaea, water meant survival. It meant opportunity. It meant risk. Along the water's edge, life gathered. Insects swarming, amphibians lurking, reptiles hunting, predators waiting. The rhythm of survival plays out again and again. The rivers were not just pathways, they were theatres, and every creature had a role. Walk the land of Pangaea, you will see them, the rulers of their age. Not dinosaurs. Not yet, but something older, something closer to us. The synapsids, mammal-like reptiles, strange and powerful, both familiar and alien. Some were small, darting in the undergrowth, sharp-toothed hunters of insects, quick, cautious, restless. Their bodies carried whispers of fur, a preview of what would come millions of years later. Others were massive, Dimetrodon, with its great sail rising from its back, not a dinosaur, but a predator of the swamps, its teeth curved like blades, its sail perhaps a heater, or a signal, or both. Synapsids filled every role: hunters, herbivores, scavengers. Some lumbered on four legs, grazing on tough plants. Others prowled on shorter limbs, jaws lined with sharp teeth. They dominated the Permian world, long before dinosaurs appeared. This was their age. Their skulls told the secret. One opening behind the eye socket, a design for stronger jaws, better chewing, more control. It set them apart. It gave them an edge. From that small difference came a dynasty, one that would stretch into mammals, and, eventually, into us. Picture the landscape: forests of conifers, open plains, swamps and rivers. Everywhere, synapsids moved. Some are basking in the sunday. Others are chasing prey through brush and mud. They were not mindless reptiles. They were innovators. They experimented with form, long bodies, massive heads, sails, tusks, thick hides. Every adaptation is a gamble for survival. But power carried risk. Predators hunted each other. Territory was contested. Food was scarce in the dry seasons. Only the strongest, the cleverest, the most adaptable endured. Insects buzzed. Amphibians croaked. But it was the synapsids who held the land. They were the apex, the defining creatures of their age. And when the Permian stretched on, they spread across Pangaea's deserts, into forests, along rivers, into coastal swamps. Wherever life could take hold, there were synapsids. Some grew armor, some grew speed, some became giants. Each is a step in the long experiment of evolution. But the story is not only of dominance, it is a legacy, because within these strange beasts lay the seeds of mammals, warm-bloodedness, hair, milk, all waiting, hidden in their line. If you look at a synapsid, you are looking at an ancestor, not directly, but closely enough, closer to the dinosaurs. The age of synapsids was one of power, but also of fragility, for as climates shifted, as extinctions loomed, their reign would be tested. Yet for this moment, on the vast continent of Pangaea, they ruled. The land echoed with their steps, their teeth, their hunger, their survival. And though they are gone, their story continues, because their blood still runs in us. The world was restless, the land was shifting, and life was changing with it. Reptiles were no longer small shadows. They were stepping forward, diversifying, experimenting, becoming more. Agile predators emerged first. Lean bodies, quick limbs, teeth like knives. They hunted insects. They chased small synapsids. They darted across floodplains and riverbanks. Speed was their weapon. Cunning was their ally. Some reptiles learned to rise higher on their legs. A new posture, a new advantage. They could run faster, move longer, hunt smarter. Every step was a glimpse of what was to come. Others turned away from the hunt. They became plant eaters, broad bodies, flat teeth, herbivores, carving out a different path. They fed on ferns, cycads, and conifers, digesting tough greens with patience and persistence. What had once been predator stock became peaceful grazers. This balance reshaped ecosystems. Hunters and grazers, chasers and chewers. Every niche is filled. Every role is expanding. Among them were the archosaurs, the ruling reptiles, not rulers yet, but destined to rise. They split into two lines, one leading to crocodiles, the other toward dinosaurs. At first, they looked ordinary, not giants, not monstrous, just small, nimble creatures. But within them was potential, speed, endurance, adaptability, the blueprint of domination. Some had armor, rows of bony plates along their backs, defense against larger predators. Others had long jaws, sharp snouts, perfect for snapping fish from rivers. Reptiles were experimenting with every form, every strategy. The land of Pangaea was their laboratory, a vast stage without borders. One continent, one connected arena. Species met, species competed, and competition sharpened evolution's blade. Picture the scene, a floodplain after heavy rains. Green plants stretch across the horizon. Herbivores graze in herds, their tails swishing flies away. From the edge of the forest, predators watch, silent, calculating, waiting for a mistake. This tension defined Pangaea, life pressing against life. Every innovation met with a counter. Every predator forces prey to evolve. Every prey forces predators to improve. And so, reptiles diversified. They filled the deserts, the forests, the rivers, the coastlines. Some are small and agile. Some are large and lumbering, each one carving its place in the new world. The ancestors of dinosaurs walked among them, still unremarkable, still hidden in the crowd. But with each generation, they grew sharper, all faster, better adapted to the shifting climates. They were waiting for their time. For now, reptiles were equals, sharing the land with synapsids, filling the gaps left by extinctions. But change was on the horizon. A new balance is forming, a world preparing for the rise of giants. The reptiles had diversified, and in that diversity, the seeds of dinosaurs had been planted. The air above Pangaea was alive, not just with wind, not just with rain, but with wings. The insect kingdom ruled the skies, and they ruled it in style. Dragonflies the size of birds, wingspans stretching more than 2 feet. They darted through the air like living darts, eyes sharp, movements precise, masters of flight long before birds ever existed. Imagine standing near a swamp. The buzz fills your ears. A shadow flashes overhead. It's not a bird, it's a dragonfly, a predator of the air, catching smaller insects in mid-flight. Rulers of the aerial world. But dragonflies were not alone. Beetles crawled in endless numbers, armored tanks of the forest floor, chewing leaves, breaking down plants, turning vegetation into nutrients. They were the recyclers, the cleaners, the hidden workers of Pangaea. Cockroaches thrived too, hardy, resilient, unstoppable. They crept through the undergrowth, feeding on scraps, living anywhere and everywhere. A design so perfect it barely changed for millions of years. Then came the buzzing clouds, termites, ant-like ancestors, insects that worked together. They built mounds. They broke down wood. They shaped entire ecosystems with their hunger and their teamwork. The rivers were alive with them too. Mayflies danced in swarms above the water. Mosquito-like insects hovered, seeking blood or nectar. Each species plays its role. Each one is woven into the web of life. Insects were the foundation. They fed reptiles. They fed the amphibians. They fed small synapsids scurrying in the leaf litter. Without insects, Pangaea's food chain would have collapsed. And yet, insects were not just food. They were architects, pollinating plants, breaking down dead material, recycling life back into soil. The forests and floodplains depended on their constant work. The scale was staggering. Billions of wings, billions of legs. Every corner of the supercontinent is alive with their presence. Insects adapted fast. Wings folded. Bodies armored. Colors shifting to blend into bark and leaves. Some glowed with faint light. Some released noxious chemicals. Some stung. Others bit. 1,000 strategies, all perfected in miniature. And the giants of the insect world left the deepest mark. Dragonflies, hovering like helicopters, grabbing prey mid-air. Their dominance was only possible because Earth's oxygen levels were higher then. Air richer, breathing easier, fueling bigger bodies, stronger wings, longer flights. The insect kingdom was not just background noise. It was the heartbeat of Pangaea. Its hum filled the forests. Its buzz carried across rivers. Its constant motion shaped the rhythm of life. Predators waited for them. Herbivores depended on them. Even plants relied on them. The insects connected it all. So when we picture Pangaea, we must not only see the deserts, rivers, and reptiles, we must hear it. The unending buzz. The wings flashing in sunlight. The world of insects. The tiny giants of the age. Before reptiles took over, amphibians ruled the waterways. They were giants compared to what we know today. Creatures like labyrinthodonts, heavy bodies, broad skulls, living between two worlds, water and land. For millions of years, they were the apex, top predators of rivers, lakes, and swamps, ambushing prey, lunging from the shallows. Their jaws snapped shut with power. But time was not on their side. The rise of Pangaea changed everything. The climate shifted. The interior grew drier. Rain is less frequent. Lakes and rivers are shrinking. The safe havens of amphibians are disappearing. They needed water, always water, to keep skin moist, to lay eggs, to survive. Without it, their future grew fragile. Reptiles, on the other hand, were free. Scaly skin kept them from drying out. Eggs with shells protected life on land. They could roam deserts. They could thrive far from rivers. They didn't need constant moisture. It was evolution's advantage. And amphibians felt the pressure. Each drought cut their numbers. Each shrinking wetland reduced its range. Every dry season was a threat. Still some held on, clinging to rivers, hiding in floodplains, burrowing into mud when the heat rose, waiting for the rains to return. Survivors, but no longer rulers. The predators that once feared them now surpassed them. Reptiles grew larger, faster, more adaptable. Amphibians stayed tied to the old ways. The balance shifted. Their age of dominance slipped away. Imagine a dry plain in Pangaea's heart. A river once wide is now reduced to a trickle. Amphibians cluster in the mud, skin drying, breathing heavy. They wait for a storm that may never come. Nearby, reptiles wander freely, hunting, thriving, taking territory once ruled by their amphibious rivals. This was the pattern. One group is declining, the other rising. A slow trade of power written across millions of years. But amphibians didn't vanish. They adapted in smaller ways. Some retreated to wetter coasts. Some stayed hidden in swamps. Some shrank in size, surviving in niches where reptiles couldn't reach. Resilience kept them alive, yet their glory was gone. No longer the giants of the waterways. No longer the masters of rivers. They became background players. Important, yes, but no longer dominant. Today, their descendants remain. Frogs, salamanders, caecilians, echoes of a time when amphibians were rulers. Their decline was not sudden. It was a slow erosion, a long goodbye, written in every dried-up river, every vanished swamp, every advantage reptiles carried onto land. Pangaea was harsh, and in that harshness, Amphibians lost their crown, but they endured, quietly, persistently, a reminder that survival doesn't always mean dominance. Sometimes, it simply means holding on. When Pangaea ruled the land, the oceans ruled the rest. One vast sea, Panthalassa, stretching across nearly the entire planet, a world ocean, no borders, no limits. Imagine standing on Pangaea's coast. The horizon is unbroken. Water as far as the eye could see, the largest ocean Earth has ever known. Panthalassa was powerful. Its currents circled the globe, driving climate, carrying heat, shaping storms. Its waves touched every shore of Pangaea. But there was more than just Panthalassa. Inside Pangaea's embrace, another sea formed, the Tethys Ocean, a smaller body of water, cradled between the land masses. A warm, shallow sea, rich in life. The Tethys was very different from Panthalassa. It was calm, inviting. Its waters are warmed by the sunday. Its shallows are home to reefs, to fish, to early marine reptiles. This contrast was striking. Panthalassa, vast, deep, sometimes empty. Tethys, shallow, busy, teeming with life. Together, they shaped Pangaea's destiny. Panthalassa influenced the climate. Its currents brought rain to some coasts and left others dry. It carried storms around the globe, sometimes battering Pangaea's edges with fury. The Tethys, meanwhile, became a cradle. It nurtured species that would spread across the seas. It was the perfect place for life to experiment, to thrive, to evolve. Reefs flourished. Corals built underwater worlds. Fish darted in and out, sheltering in their shadows. Early ichthyosaurs patrolled the shallows, streamlined hunters of a new age. And all the while, Panthalassa roared, covering 3/4 of the earth, holding secrets in its depths. Its vastness humbles even the greatest creatures. Think about this for a moment. On land, there was one supercontinent. In the sea, one superocean. Earth had gathered itself into unity. One world of land, one world of water. This unity came at a cost. With so much water locked into one ocean, circulation was extreme. The deep interior of Pangaea baked under dry winds. The coasts flourished under the rains. The balance of life was always tied to the sea. Every storm began in Panthalassa. Every flood is tied to its moods. Every breath of coastal air is touched by its salt. The oceans were not just background. They were active players, shaping the land, feeding it, testing it. Without them, Pangaea would have been barren. With them, life had the stage it needed, a stage split between extremes. And though Pangaea is gone, its oceans remain in memory. The Pacific, today, is a fragment of Panthalassa. The Mediterranean is a distant echo of the Tethys. One land, one sea. That was Earth during the age of Pangaea. So relax and let that image sink in. An endless horizon of blue, a supercontinent at your back, a world balanced between land and water. And if you've enjoyed this journey so far, don't forget to subscribe, because there's so much more to uncover, and you don't want to miss where we drift next. Where land met water, Pangaea's coasts came alive. This was not an empty shoreline. This was a world bursting with life. Along the edges of the supercontinent, shallow seas stretched out, warm, sunlit, perfect for growth. Here, coral reefs flourished. Great underwater cities, built stone by stone, polyp by polyp. Tiny creatures stacked limestone towers that would last for millions of years. Reefs were magnets for life. Fish darted in every direction, some tiny, flashing silver, others armoured, lumbering through the water. Crustaceans scuttled between cracks, sheltering from predators. Every crevice, every coral head was alive. Hovering above, predators lurked, shadows moving with grace. Marine reptiles, the new rulers of these seas, ichthyosaurs, shaped like dolphins, streamlined for speed, eyes huge, perfect for hunting in dim waters. They patrolled the coastlines, chasing fish into tight schools, before striking. Not alone, Nothosaurs slid through the shallows, their long necks weave between waves, snapping at prey. They were agile hunters, gliding between reef and open sea. These reptiles were pioneers, the first steps in a new evolutionary story, descendants of land creatures who had returned to the water. They claimed the coasts as their hunting grounds. And they were not the only ones here. Ammonites floated above the reefs, spiraled shells drifting like paper lanterns, some small, some as big as cartwheels. Their tentacles plucked at drifting prey, a reminder that cephalopods had already mastered these seas. Every layer of life was present. At the bottom, coral builders. Above them, grazing fish. Predators are weaving between. And at the top, reptiles dominate the hunt. The coast was where abundance gathered. Warm currents carried nutrients. Rivers from Pangaea's heart delivered silt, minerals, and food. Storms churned the shallows, feeding them again. It was a cycle of energy, always moving, always replenishing. To stand on the shore of Pangaea would have been to watch life collide. Bird-sized dragonflies buzzing overhead, amphibians croaking in the marshes, and beyond the tide line reefs glowing with colour, schools of fish flashing like mirrors in the sunday. Marine reptiles break the surface with a sharp breath before diving again. It was a contrast to Pangaea's harsh deserts, where the interior baked, the coasts thrived. One world, two extremes. These coastal worlds mattered. They were engines of evolution, safe havens where species could flourish, launching pads for the great reptilian dynasties to come. Even today, the echoes remain. The Mediterranean, the reefs of Southeast Asia, the fossil shells in cliffs and mountains that were once seabeds, all reminders of a time when life exploded along Pangaea's shores. One land, one ocean, and, at the edge, where they touched life at its richest. So take a deep breath. Picture the reef beneath the waves, the dart of fish, the glide of reptiles, the pulse of an ancient sea. This was Pangaea's coastline, the border between survival and abundance. Deep inside Pangaea, far from the coasts, life changed. No rivers, no forests, only sand. The supercontinent's heart was a desert. Endless dunes rolled to the horizon. Yellow, red, rust-coloured under the burning Sunday. A land of extremes. Daytime was merciless. The sun hung heavy overhead. The ground baked. Air shimmered in waves of heat. Water was almost nowhere to be found. Any pool that formed after rain vanished quickly into the dust. But the night was no kinder. The heat fled. Cold spread fast. Freezing winds swept across the dunes. The same land that scorched during the day could cut like ice at night. Plants struggled here. Only the hardiest survived. Low, scrubby vegetation clung to the soil. Some seed ferns, some conifers, all small, tough, and dry. They grew slowly, they endured. Animals had it harder. Amphibians, once rulers of waterways, rarely reached this far. The desert offered no home for them. Instead, reptiles claimed the land. Tough-skinned, efficient with water, able to withstand the extremes. Small synapsids, too, scurried in the shadows, burrowing into sand, hiding from the Sunday, searching at night for insects or roots. Survival here demanded silence and patience. Predators roamed the edges. Larger reptiles, sleek and agile, stalked the sparse oases. They waited for herbivores, drawn to the last green patches. Ambush was the only option in a land so open. Sandstorms were constant. Winds swept across the open plains, carrying dust that stung eyes and clogged lungs. Visibility could vanish in minutes. A wall of sand, a roar of wind, and then silence again. Fossils tell us these deserts stretched vast, from what is now North America across to Africa, from Europe to Asia, a single unbroken sea of dunes. It may have been one of the largest arid regions in Earth's history. And yet, even here, life found a way. Tracks in ancient sandstone reveal the passage of reptiles. Small clawed footprints, tail drags, marks of creatures that braved the dunes. Proof that even the harshest land still carried life. The deserts of Pangaea shaped evolution. They rewarded the resilient, the ones that could conserve water, the ones that could travel far to find food, the ones that could hide when the sun blazed and emerge when the stars rose. To imagine it is to imagine silence. No rivers, no buzzing forests, only the wind, only the shifting sand, and the faint marks of survival pressed into the ground. This was the heart of Pangaea, vast, empty, a desert that stretched for thousands of kilometers, a world of extremes that tested every living thing that dared to cross it. Endless dunes, scorching days, freezing nights. This was life at the center of the supercontinent. Not every plant vanished in the deserts of Pangaea. Some adapted, some endured. In the heart of the supercontinent, survival meant toughness. Water was scarce. Seasons were harsh. But still, green life clung to the earth. Conifers rose first among the survivors. Tall, needle-bearing trees. They could handle drought. Their narrow leaves lost little water. Their seeds spread far, carried by the wind. They did not need constant rivers or rich soil. They grew where others could not. Seed ferns also found a way. Not true ferns, not true trees, but something in between. With deep roots and sturdy leaves, they pushed into the dry ground. They anchored themselves in shallow valleys and floodplains. Whenever rain returned, they thrived. When it faded, they endured in silence. Cycads dotted the landscape, short, stout plants with crowns of stiff leaves. They looked almost like palms, but tougher, built for long summers and dry winds. They spread slowly but steadily, a quiet persistence across Pangaea's plains. Shrubs crept close to the ground, low, thorny, and stubborn. They held onto the soil, stopping it from blowing away in the storms. Their roots dug deep, searching for moisture far below the surface. Some carried protective coatings, waxy skins against the sunday. They lasted where larger, softer plants would wither. Vegetation shaped the land. In floodplains, green pushed back against sand. In valleys, forests clustered, dark and cool. In deserts, only scattered trees and scrub survived. But even there, the roots held life steady. Plants were the base of every ecosystem. Without them, no reptiles could graze. No insects could swarm. No synapsids could dig for roots in the night. They kept Pangaea alive. Silent, sturdy, patient. These survivors carried a legacy. Conifers still stand today, from pine forests to towering redwoods. Cycads remain, almost unchanged, living fossils in tropical lands. Even seed ferns, though long gone, left their mark in the rocks and coal. Imagine it, an endless dry plain, sand and stone, stretched to the horizon, and in the middle one tree, a conifer, green needles shining against the heat. Its roots are deep, its trunk scarred but alive, a reminder that life bends but does not break. The plants of Pangaea were not delicate. They were survivors. They weathered storms, droughts, and shifting climates. They held on through the rise of reptiles and the fall of amphibians. They adapted when the land itself changed. They remind us of a truth. Life does not need perfect conditions to endure. It only needs resilience, patience, and the will to survive. This was the greenery of Pangaea, sparse, stubborn, but unshakable. Plants that endured, plants that shaped worlds, plants that carried the story of survival through time. Over Pangaea, the air never rested. It moved in long, unbroken currents, vast streams of wind, crossing from ocean to desert, from mountain to plain. With no continents to block them, the winds stretched far. They gained power as they travelled. Endless miles, endless speed. They carried dust, rain, and storms across the world. In the deserts of the interior, the winds carved dunes. They lifted sand into the sky. Storms of grit and dust choked the horizon. For days, the sun vanished behind the haze. The air itself became a weapon, sharp, blinding, relentless. But along the coasts, the winds behaved differently. Here, water and land met. Here, heat and moisture danced. The monsoons were born. Summer winds pulled in wet air from the oceans. Clouds rose high, black and heavy. Thunder rolled across Pangaea's shorelines. Then the sky opened. Rain poured down in sheets, flooding rivers and plains. Life blossomed in an instant. Forests swelled green. Insects hummed in the damp air. Reptiles drank deep from swollen streams. Then the seasons turned. The winds shifted. Dry air swept inland. The rains vanished. Drought settled in again. Cracks split the soil. Plants withered. The cycle began anew. These winds shaped everything. They carried seeds across barren plains. They spread dust that fed distant lands. They sculpted dunes higher than cities. They carved valleys with their storms. They told the rhythm of life. Feast, famine, feast again. Imagine standing on the edge of Pangaea, the sea to one side, the desert stretches behind. Suddenly, the wind rises. It howls through the trees. It whips the sand into the air. The sky darkens with storm clouds. And then silence. The stillness before thunder cracks open the heavens. The creatures of Pangaea learned to live with this power. They followed the rains. They took shelter from the dust storms. They knew the signs in the air. A change in the wind could mean survival or death. Even today, traces of these winds remain. Layers of ancient dust, buried in stone. Marks carved into rock by sand are carried for miles. Fossilized floodplains, born of vanished monsoons. The whispers of air currents, frozen in time. Pangaea was not just a land of extremes. It was a land of breath, of storms that crossed oceans and deserts without pause, of winds that shaped earth and sky alike. And as the supercontinent broke apart, those winds changed too. But during Pangaea's reign, they ruled unchallenged, relentless, powerful, eternal. The winds of the supercontinent, the breath of a world made whole. Beneath Pangaea's surface, the earth was restless. Pressure built deep in the mantle. Cracks opened in the crust. And, when the force grew too strong, the land erupted. Volcanoes towered over the supercontinent. Some were mountains of fire, erupting in violent bursts. Others spilled lava slowly, rivers of molten rock crawling across the plains. Every eruption reshaped the land. Every eruption rewrote the skies. Ash clouds rose high. They blotted out the Sunday. For days, the world lay in shadow. Temperatures dropped. Forests withered. Animals searched for warmth in a cooling land. Then, just as suddenly, the skies cleared. The greenhouse gases released carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, trapped heat. The planet swung back toward warmth. Cycles of cold and heat, darkness and fire. Volcanoes were the clockwork heartbeat of Pangaea. Lava flows hardened into black stone. They carved scars across valleys. They buried rivers only for new waterways to cut fresh paths. Mountains rose from once flat plains, jagged reminders of the earth's fury. And the gases? They changed everything. Too much carbon, and the world sweltered. Too much sulfur, and acid rain fell from the sky. Life adapted or vanished. For the creatures of Pangaea, eruption meant chaos. Ash fell like snow, choking plants. Herbivores starved. Predators followed. Only the toughest survived. Burrowers, scavengers, wanderers that could leave a dying land behind. But volcanoes also gave. Their ash enriched the soil. Their heat opened cracks where water boiled and life found refuge. In time, new forests grew on cooled lava plains, green against black, renewal rising from destruction. Imagine standing near one of these giants. The ground trembles beneath your feet. The air tastes of sulfur. A distant roar grows louder. Then, explosion. The sky tears open. Flames and rock shoot upward. The horizon disappears in smoke, and night falls at noon. For Pangaea, volcanoes were not rare events. They were constant. Rift valleys split as the supercontinent strained under its own size. Lava surged upward through the cracks. Flood basalts spread across thousands of miles. Entire regions were drowned in fire, and yet without them, the Earth would have been still. Too still. Volcanoes kept the planet alive. They cycled gases between Earth and sky. They built mountains, carved rivers, and created new lands. They were both destroyers and creators. Today, we can still see their mark. Ancient lava fields are buried in stone. Traces of ash in sediment layers. Fossils of plants and animals caught in sudden firestorms. The memory of fire written into rock. Pangaea was not just a land of wind and water. It was a land of fire. Its heartbeat thundered beneath the surface. Its breath rose as ash into the skies. Its voice roared from volcanic throats. Volcanoes shaped Pangaea's past, and their legacy still lingers beneath our feet. Pangaea was not just flat plains and endless deserts. It was a land of giants, mountains born from fire and fury. Long before the dinosaurs wandered, continents collided. North met south. East pressed against west. The crust buckled. Rock folded. Mountains rose where once there was nothing. The Appalachians began as a clash between Proto-North America and Africa. Rocks that had lain under seas were thrust upward. Valleys plunged. Peaks soared. Rivers cut deep gorges through the hard stone. The air thinned. Snow dusted the tallest summits. Across the supercontinent, the Urals were forming. Europe and Asia pressed together in a slow, relentless grind. The collision left scars in the rock folds, faults, and folds within folds. These mountains were Pangaea's skeleton, holding the land together like giant spines. The process was slow. Millions of years passed. Each collision reshaped the land, subtly at first, then dramatically. Plates shoved beneath plates. Mantle pushed upward. Earth cracked. Volcanoes often followed. Lava filled valleys. Ash coated slopes. Mountains grew, not just taller, but wider, tougher, unyielding. The land was alive, moving beneath the feet of every creature. Rivers raced down these young mountains. They carved canyons. They carried sediments far into floodplains. Forests clung to slopes, roots holding fast to what little soil could exist. Herbivores grazed along lower ridges. Predators stalked in shadows. Even now, we can see the echoes of these collisions. The Appalachians, jagged and ancient, whisper of a time when continents pressed together. The Urals, stretched across Russia, tell the same story. These are scars of Pangaea, a record written in stone. Life adapted to these highlands. Cold winds swept across peaks. Snow lingered in valleys. Some plants survived where others perished. Animals learned to climb, hide, and endure. Mountains became refuges during floods, volcanic eruptions, and droughts. Mountains were more than obstacles. They shaped the climate. Rainfall patterns shifted around ridges. Wind funneled through valleys. Rivers split and merged. Deserts formed in their rain shadows. Forests thrived where water pooled. The tallest peaks of Pangaea may have rivaled today's mountains, though time has worn them down. Erosion carved terraces, rounded cliffs, and jagged spires. Yet the story remains visible, etched into the bedrock, telling of a world forged under unimaginable pressure. Standing atop one of these ranges in Pangaea would have been humbling. Vast forests stretched below. Rivers wound like silver threads. The horizon curved, unbroken, under a single sky. You could feel the power of Earth itself, the slow grind of tectonics, the upward push of rock, the endless patience of mountains forming. These mountains were not just landscapes, they were architects of ecosystems. They guided rivers, shaped weather, and influenced where life could thrive. And when Pangaea finally split, they became markers, silent witnesses to the continent that once was. The collisions of Pangaea gave us more than geography. They gave us history, written in stone. Every fold, every ridge, every peak tells the story of a world under pressure. The mountains of collision remind us the Earth is alive. It moves, it reshapes, and the scars of Pangaea endure, still visible today. Life on Pangaea thrived for millions of years. Forests stretched, rivers flowed, and deserts baked under the sunday. Then, the planet shifted. The Earth itself seemed to exhale fire. In what is now Siberia, volcanoes erupted. The Siberian traps, vast, unstoppable, unimaginable. Lava poured across the land. Ash filled the sky. Gases choked the air. Sulfur, carbon dioxide, and methane. The atmosphere thickened. Sunlight struggled to reach the ground. Temperatures soared. The oceans are heating. Oxygen levels fell. Forests wilted. Rivers dried. Deserts expanded. Life that had thrived for millions of years began to falter. Amphibians, once rulers of rivers, struggled. Small synapsids clung to survival. Insects, giants of the skies, vanished in clouds. Reptiles fought to endure. The world became harsh, unrelenting. This was not a moment. It was an era, hundreds of thousands of years of fire and smoke. Millions of square kilometers are covered in lava. The land itself is reborn in destruction. The oceans were silent. Dead zones expanded. Marine life suffocated. Coral reefs collapsed. Fish disappeared from shallow waters. Even the skies were unkind. Storms raged. Ash blocked the Sunday. Lightning cracked volcanic plumes. Rain, when it came, was acidic. Life that survived had to adapt fast. Small bodies, efficient metabolisms. Water conservation became crucial. Food scarcity forced migration. Shelter meant survival. Yet, even in chaos, a few thrived. The hardiest plants are drought-tolerant and resilient. Some conifers, seed ferns in sheltered valleys. Life held on in margins, in niches overlooked by catastrophe. Predators stalked these survivors. Small synapsids hunted insects. Reptiles followed herbivores in shrinking forests. The cycle of life persisted, but thinner, quieter, more fragile. The Great Dying reshaped everything. Old ecosystems vanished. Floodplains became empty. Rivers carried nothing but ash and debris. Forests were reduced to ghostly remnants. And yet, it was also a reset. The survivors were the architects of the future. They carried traits that would define new eras. Small synapsids would evolve into mammals. Early reptiles would diversify into dinosaurs. Life would emerge stronger, more adaptable. The Great Dying was absolute, yet not the end. Pangaea itself endured, scarred but still whole. The supercontinent's rivers continued to flow. Mountains still rose against the sky. The land waited for life to return. Standing on Pangaea during this time would have been terrifying. Ash in the air, heat pressing down, volcanoes glowing red on the horizon. Yet, beneath the destruction, survival quietly persisted. This was the turning point. From devastation, new life would rise. The age of the dinosaurs was coming. The first mammals were taking root. Pangaea, though wounded, still held the stage. The Great Dying began with fire, ash, and fury. But from it, the next chapter of Earth's story would unfold. The air was thick. The sun beat down harder than ever. Greenhouse gases trap heat. Carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur. Temperatures soared across Pangaea. Coastal forests struggled. Deserts expanded. Rivers shrank. Oceans grew hotter. The seas could barely breathe. Oxygen disappeared from the water. Dead zones spread. Fish suffocated. Coral reefs turned to rubble. Plankton, the base of life, dwindled. Without them, everything above suffered. Crustaceans died. Shellfish vanished. Marine predators found nothing to eat. Heat and suffocation worked together. Life had no refuge. Even inland lakes boiled under the relentless Sunday. Small amphibians dried up in mud. Insects collapsed from heat stress. Some creatures survived. They were small, compact, water efficient, adaptable. They hid in burrows or under rocks. They ate whatever they could find. Plants struggled too. Tall forests fell. Drought-resistant conifers clung to life. Seed ferns and cycads survived in sheltered valleys. The interior deserts were nearly lifeless. Volcanoes continued to erupt. Ash clouds blocked the sunlight temporarily. Heat and fire reshaped the land. But the atmosphere remained heavy. The oceans were slow to recover. Survivors became specialists. Synapsids shrank in size. They hunted insects and scavenged small prey. Reptiles developed water-saving adaptations. Marine survivors adapted to low oxygen. Life is focused on efficiency. Even storms became deadly. Monsoons arrived irregularly. Rain fell in torrents or skipped entire seasons. Floods alternated with droughts. Every change tests life further. Yet, this harsh world was a crucible. The heat killed the weak. Oxygen shortages forced innovation. Only adaptable life could survive. Over time, life found niches. Small synapsids became more efficient hunters. Reptiles diversified. The first dinosaurs slowly gained a foothold. Marine life adapted to oxygen-poor zones. The oceans that once teemed with abundance became selective. Only the resilient remained. Small fish, hardy invertebrates, oxygen-tolerant species. These survivors carried the blueprint for future oceans. Heat and suffocation reshaped the planet. Ecosystems thinned and shifted. Deserts grew. Rivers shrank. Mountains became refuges. Life clung on. Persistence became survival. Survival shaped evolution. Traits that helped withstand heat and low oxygen were passed on. Adaptation became the new law. Pangaea endured. The supercontinent remained intact. The land scarred. The seas are suffocating. The atmosphere is thick with greenhouse gases. And yet, life endured. It was smaller, quieter, fragile, but it survived. These survivors would rise again. From heat and suffocation, new life would emerge. Pangaea was still the stage. Its story was far from over. Insects ruled the skies and forests. Dragonflies with wingspans like birds. Beetles are crawling across every leaf. Grasshoppers are hopping through the undergrowth. Then came the heat, the suffocating air. Rivers dried. Lakes vanished. Forests fell silent. Food disappeared. Plants withered. Pollens stopped flowing. Nectar disappeared. Larvae starved in drying mud. The great dying did not spare them. Rare in their history, insects faced mass extinction. Buzzing kingdoms became quiet. Swarms that once darkened the skies vanished. Some survived. They were small, hiding under the bark, in soil burrows, protected from heat and drought. Specialists became the only winners. Water-conserving insects thrived. Those that could feed on detritus survived. Opportunists scuttled through debris. Predators that depended on insects suffered. Small synapsids struggled. Amphibians starved. Reptiles adapted to their diets or moved. The collapse reshaped ecosystems. Pollination halted in many regions. Plant reproduction slowed. Seed ferns and cycads survived in limited pockets. Vegetation became patchy and fragile. Insects that survived were resilient. They were the seeds of a new beginning. For a few, life would diversify. From silence, buzzing would return. The skies looked empty. No dragonflies. No swarming bees. The hum of life had gone. Even aquatic insects suffered. Larvae drowned in oxygen-poor waters. Streams and rivers became deserts. Only the toughest larvae persisted in hidden pools. This collapse was global. From the coasts to the deserts, insects disappeared. A rare extinction in a group that had dominated for hundreds of millions of years. The loss rippled through food chains. Predators lost prey. Plants lost pollinators. Ecosystems became fragile and uneven. Survivors adapted. Burrowing insects hid from heat. Some evolved faster life cycles. Others developed tolerance to harsh conditions. The insect kingdom was shattered. A small fraction remained. But these survivors were the ancestors of future swarms. They would repopulate forests. They would rebuild their dominion. Even in collapse, insects shaped evolution. Predators learned to hunt smaller prey. Plants evolved to survive with fewer pollinators. Life adapted to scarcity. The earth had shifted. The age of insects' dominance paused. The world became quieter, harsher, yet the potential for resurgence remained. From their collapse came opportunity. The survivors set the stage for a new Triassic world. New insects would emerge. New ecosystems would form. The kingdom had fallen, but it would rise again. Pangaea's story was one of survival. Not all kingdoms end in death. Some rebuild. Some endure. The insects taught the planet resilience. The forests of Pangaea were vast. Towering conifers, sprawling cycads, seed ferns everywhere. They carpeted coasts and river valleys. Life thrived in green abundance. Then the world changed. The Great Dying arrived. Volcanoes poured lava and ash. Sulfur and carbon dioxide choked the air. The heat rose. Rainfall disappeared. Coastal forests began to shrink. Rivers dried. Floodplains cracked. Green turned brown. In the interior, conditions were worse. Vast deserts expanded. Sandstorms raged. Temperatures soared by day. Freezing nights followed. Plants struggled. Seed ferns wilted in the heat. Cycads dropped leaves to conserve water. Conifers burned where lightning struck. Some survived, but many vanished. Without water, roots could not reach the soil. Leaves could not photosynthesize. Shade vanished. The forest floor baked. Animals that depended on forests suffered. Herbivores starved. Insects lost their shelter. Amphibians, reliant on moisture, retreated to the few remaining wetlands. Some coastal pockets held life. Rainfall persisted there longer. Rivers trickled. Vegetation clung to the edges. But these oases were fragile. Fires swept through the remaining forests. Lava flows incinerate life. Ash darkened the skies for years. Sunlight was blocked. Growth slowed. The green corridors of Pangaea fractured. Once continuous forests became isolated patches. Populations were separated. Survivors adapted or perished. Even in barren regions, life tried to endure. Drought-resistant conifers persisted. Some seed ferns hunkered down in valleys. Hardy plants grew slowly. They waited for the rains to return. Ecosystems changed completely. Dense forests were replaced by sparse shrubs. Rivers carried less sediment. Floodplains became dusty flats. Animals moved to follow the shrinking greenery. This collapse reshaped evolution. Herbivores shrank. Predators adapted to new hunting grounds. Reptiles and synapsids found niches in recovering patches. The world had lost much of its richness. Where life was abundant, it became fragile. Where forests once connected continents, deserts now separate them. The age of lush dominance ended. Yet, some seeds endured, hidden in valleys and riverbanks. Dormant spores and roots waited. Even in death, life left remnants. Over millions of years, these survivors spread. Forests slowly reclaimed coastal zones. Rivers carved new floodplains. The interior remained harsh, but pockets of green returned. The lesson was survival. Not all forests survived the Great Dying. Not all life thrived, but resilience remained. Pangaea's forests had been tested. Some fell, some endured. Life persisted, quietly preparing for the Triassic world. The Great Dying left Pangaea quiet. Most of its creatures perished. Forests shrank. Deserts spread. Oceans suffocated. Yet some life endured. Small synapsids survived. They were lean, compact, and efficient. They needed less food, less water. Their size became an advantage. Reptiles adapted too. Tough skin conserved moisture. Strong lungs drew oxygen from thin air. Some burrowed. Some hunted at night. Heat and drought shaped them. The survivors were not dominant. They were silent, hidden in the margins of the old world. But they were clever, flexible, resilient. Rivers and oases became lifelines. Synapsids scurried along their banks, hunting insects, avoiding predators, finding cover among sparse shrubs. Reptiles patrolled dry valleys. Some became herbivores, eating hardy ferns and drought-tolerant plants. Others became predators. Slim, fast, patient, they mastered the harsh new Pangaea. Life was no longer abundant. It was strategic. Survivors found niches. They adapted to scarcity, to heat, to isolation. Small synapsids evolved quietly. Some showed early mammal-like traits, fur-like structures, differentiated teeth, more efficient movement. They were the blueprint of mammals to come. Reptiles filled open roles, freed from competition. Some grew larger, some stayed small. Predators and prey adjusted together. Evolution pressed forward, silently. The world was changing. Rivers flowed intermittently. Oases dried and refilled with rain. Deserts continued to dominate the interior. Mountains shifted under tectonic strain. Life tracked the water. Animals migrated across Pangaea, from coasts to rivers to interior valleys. Movement was survival. Isolation led to diversification. Small populations adapted quickly. Insects, though diminished, persisted. Plants clung to riverbanks. Herbivores survived on sparse vegetation. Predators adjusted their hunting patterns. The ecosystem rebuilt itself slowly. Persistence became the rule. Dominance no longer mattered. Adaptation mattered. Flexibility mattered. Small synapsids and resilient reptiles were the quiet architects. They carried life forward. The stage for the Triassic was set. The blueprint of tomorrow's mammals and dinosaurs emerged. From the silence of the Great Dying, life stirred again. Shy, clever, enduring. The survivors shaped Pangaea's recovery. They filled the niches left behind. Life would rise once more. The world was harsh, but it was alive. Pangaea's echoes lingered in these survivors. Small bodies, strong instincts, and endurance. The quiet heroes of a dying age, preparing for the next chapter. The Triassic world was waiting. The Great Dying did not spare the seas. Panthalassa, the global ocean, became a hostile place. Oxygen levels dropped. Dead zones spread. Marine life struggled to survive. Coral reefs, once vibrant, began to die. Sheltering fish vanished. Crustaceans dwindled. Invertebrates suffered. Plankton, the foundation of the ocean, thinned. Warm greenhouse waters worsened the crisis. Heat trapped by volcanic gases pushed temperatures higher. Surface waters boiled in some areas. Deep waters stagnated. Oxygen dissolved slowly. Creatures suffocated. Siberian traps eruptions made it worse. Volcanic gases acidified the water. Carbon dioxide rose. Sulfur compounds flowed into the atmosphere. Rainfall patterns changed. Rivers carried ash and chemicals into the oceans. Shallow seas became dead zones first. Fish and mollusks vanished. Some species clung to deeper waters. Others disappeared completely. Marine predators starved. Ammonites, trilobites, and brachiopods dwindled. Sharks survived only in small numbers. The balance of the ocean was shattered. Even the smallest creatures felt the impact. Plankton blooms failed. Filter feeders lost their food. Ecosystems collapsed from the bottom up. Yet not all was lost. Some species endured. Hardy fish adapted to low oxygen. Some invertebrates burrowed into sediments. They waited, persisted, survived. The recovery would be slow. The oceans remained patchy. Dead zones lingered for thousands of years. Life struggled to regain former abundance. Marine migration patterns changed. Species sought oxygen-rich waters. Coral reefs would eventually rebound, but in new forms. New predator-prey relationships slowly emerged. Volcanic ash enriched sediments over time. Nutrients flowed into isolated pockets. Some ecosystems found refuge. Life began small recoveries. Resilient survivors became the foundation for future oceans. The Great Dying reshaped the seas. Old kingdoms fell. New lineages waited in the shadows. The blueprint for Triassic oceans emerged. Oceans were quieter. Stronger survivors endured. Smaller species dominated at first. Adaptation and resilience became key. Marine life had learned a harsh lesson. The world above and below water was linked. Land droughts mirrored oceanic collapse. Survivors on land and sea shaped the next era. Small, adaptable species held the line. From the devastation, life would rise again. Coral reefs would regrow. Fish would diversify. Sharks would reclaim the seas. The oceans were wounded, but not dead. Pangaea's waters remembered the Great Dying. Every current carried the echo. Every tide whispered survival. Marine life that endured would lay the foundation for a thriving new world. After the Great Dying, Pangaea lay scarred. Forests were gone. Deserts stretched farther than before. The land was silent. Yet, life never quits. Some plants survived. Tough, drought-resistant species endured. Conifers led the comeback. Their needles conserved water. Their roots dug deep. Seed ferns held on in isolated pockets. Cycads sprouted where soil remained fertile. Small shrubs clung to floodplains. They were pioneers in a harsh world. These hardy plants began to spread, slowly at first. Each seed carried hope. Every sprout was a new beginning. Rivers brought nutrients. Floodplains became green corridors. Plants returned to these lifelines. Even in the dry interior, small oases appeared. Survivors adapted to extreme heat. Conifers towered over the recovering landscapes. Their dense forests shaded the ground. Underneath, smaller plants grew. Mosses, ferns, and hardy herbs reclaimed spaces. The return of vegetation reshaped ecosystems. Herbivores found food again. Small synapsids and reptiles followed. Insects returned to pollinate and feed. Life began to reconnect, piece by piece. The forests weren't the same as before. They were smaller, less dense, patchy, but resilient. Nature was testing new strategies. Seed dispersal became crucial. Wind, water, and small animals spread seeds far. Plants reached distant valleys and rift zones. Isolated populations adapted differently. Diversity slowly increased. Soil rebuilt itself too. Ash from volcanoes enriched the ground. Decaying plant matter added nutrients. Rivers carried silt, feeding distant plains. The stage for future forests was set. Life on land and water grew connected again. Floodplains became hubs of activity. Rivers fed green belts. Plants anchored soils. Animals followed. The Triassic world was emerging. From small survivors, new communities formed. Hardy plants were the quiet architects. They stabilized the land. They fed herbivores. They allowed predators to return. Conifers, seed ferns, and cycads ruled this green recovery. They created microclimates. Shaded spots held moisture. Life thrived in the pockets of fertility. Across Pangaea, renewal spread. Life learned to endure extremes. The survivors of silence became the foundation. Their resilience set the stage for new ecosystems. From devastation came hope. The seeds of renewal shaped the future. Conifers and their allies led the way. The land would green again. Pangaea would recover, slowly but surely. Nature had begun its patient work. Recovery had started. Life would rise from the ashes. The stage was ready for the next era. Pangaea's future was being written one plant at a time. If you're amazed by how life bounces back, hit that subscribe button and join us as we follow the survivors shaping a new world. Pangaea isn't done teaching yet. After the Great Dying, Pangaea was quiet. Most giants were gone. Forests were sparse. Deserts stretched wide. But life held on. The smallest survivors carried the future. Tiny synapsids survived where others could not. Their compact bodies needed little food. They could hide from predators. They were built for endurance. Early reptiles were hardy too. Tough skin, strong lungs, water-saving adaptations. They crept across deserts. They followed the shrinking rivers. They explored the patchy forests. Life was cautious at first. Small creatures moved in secret. They avoided predators. They scuttled under logs. They hid in reeds and shrubs. But slowly they spread. Every valley held opportunities. Every oasis was a chance to thrive. Rivers became highways. Floodplains offered shelter and food. Synapsids evolved quickly. Some remained insectivores. Some learned to eat seeds. Some explored new niches. Adaptation was survival. Every small advantage counted. Reptiles diversified too. Some became swift hunters. Others grew stocky, eating plants. They were experimenting with life. Tiny changes created future giants. The deserts were harsh. Heat scorched the land by day. Cold froze it at night. Survivors endured. Smallness was strength. Agility was life. Life was no longer dominated by size. Survival was clever, not giant. The tiniest creatures held the blueprints. Their descendants would shape the Triassic. They carried traits that would define mammals. They carried the promise of dinosaurs. Floodplains and rivers connected the survivors. Migration allowed genes to mix. Isolation created new species. Each small population was an experiment. Nature was testing life again. Insects and plants returned slowly. Synapsids and reptiles followed them. Together, they rebuilt ecosystems. Life was resilient. Adaptation was relentless. The future was being quietly crafted. Predators learned too. They followed herbivores into new territories. They tested new hunting strategies. Even the smallest synapsids had to stay alert. Every day was a lesson in survival. Across Pangaea, small creatures moved like whispers. Their impact was invisible at first, but over millions of years, they reshaped the land. Tiny survivors became the architects of life. The stage for dinosaurs, early mammals, and thriving ecosystems was set. From silence and scarcity came opportunity. Small synapsids and early reptiles thrived where giants failed. They adapted. They endured. They multiplied. They laid the foundation for the next great chapter of Earth's history. Life would never be the same again. The tiniest survivors carried the biggest future. And Pangaea, scarred but still alive, was ready to witness it all. The great dying ended. Pangaea was quiet. The sky was clearer. Rivers ran again. Deserts still baked under the Sunday. Forests were patchy, but green returned. Life moved cautiously. Small synapsids explored the undergrowth. Reptiles crept along riverbanks. Insects began to buzz again. Plants started to reclaim the land. The Triassic had begun. It was a world of recovery. Silence still lingered in the empty plains. Opportunities waited in every valley. Every oasis mattered. Rivers became the veins of life. Floodplains supported young plants. Herbivores followed them. Predators trailed behind. Ecosystems rebuilt slowly, piece by piece. Small synapsids were everywhere. Some hunted insects. Some ate seeds. Some scavenged along riverbeds. They were clever, not large. They survived where giants could not. Reptiles adapted too. Some grew faster, smarter, more agile. Some became the first true herbivores. Some began exploring new terrains. Each adaptation opened a new niche. Nature was experimenting again. Life was quieter than before. The roaring giants were gone. The forests were not dense. The deserts spread wide. But life persisted. Resilience was everywhere. Insects returned in swarms. Dragonflies skimmed over ponds. Beetles crawled through the soil. They rebuilt food chains from the ground up. Plant life expanded. Conifers spread along riverbanks. Seed ferns reappeared in warmer regions. The interior deserts hosted hardy shrubs. Vegetation shaped every landscape. Food became available for herbivores. Predators adapted slowly. Hunting was quieter, cleverer. Small synapsids learned to avoid them. Reptiles developed speed and endurance. Survival depended on agility and awareness. The Triassic world was a laboratory. Evolution moved cautiously but steadily. Isolation in valleys created new species. Migration along rivers allowed mixing. Every creature contributed to recovery. Life was resilient but vulnerable. The scars of the Permian extinction remained. Yet, from this quieter earth, new forms emerged. Dinosaurs were still small. Mammal-like synapsids were evolving. Reptiles were experimenting with every strategy. The Triassic landscape was diverse. Coastal plains supported lush greenery. Interior deserts tested survival skills. Mountains rose slowly. Rivers carved the land into fertile corridors. Every ecosystem is adapted to extremes. Pangaea was still whole. Rivers connected the land. Animals could travel far without oceans in their way. This interconnectedness accelerated evolution. Life spread steadily across the supercontinent. The Triassic had begun. It was a quieter Earth, but one full of potential. Small survivors would shape the next era. Dinosaurs, mammals, and new reptiles were quietly emerging. Pangaea was ready for life to rise again. Recovery was slow, but inevitable. Life had endured. The stage was set for the Mesozoic. The Triassic world marked the beginning of a new chapter. The Triassic world was recovering. Life was small, cautious, and clever. Among the survivors, a new group emerged. Dinosaurs. They were tiny at first. No giants yet. No soaring predators. Just small, agile creatures. Swift on their feet. Eyes alert. Noses sniffing for prey or danger. They were unremarkable in size. Some weighed only a few kilograms. Some were barely longer than a human arm. Yet, inside them, potential waited. A power that would change the world. These early dinosaurs were hunters. Some chased insects. Some scavenged carrion. Some ate plants. They were versatile, adaptable, opportunistic. Speed was their weapon. Agility was survival. Hiding under ferns. Darting between rocks. They moved with careful precision. The environment tested them. Rivers carved valleys. Deserts baked the interior. Forests along the coasts provided cover. Mountains redirected winds and rains. Life had to be clever to endure. Other reptiles roamed too. Some were predators. Some were herbivores. Competition was fierce. Dinosaurs were small, but they were fast learners. Every challenge shaped their evolution. Their bones were light. Legs are strong and flexible. Necks and tails balanced with grace. These traits would serve them for millions of years. Each generation grew sharper, faster, smarter. The first dinosaurs were diverse. Some were bipedal, moving on two legs. Some were quadrupedal, browsing the low plants. Some were armored. Some were built for stealth. Variation was key to survival. They lived along rivers, floodplains, and forests. Rivers provided water. Floodplains offered food. Forests offered cover from larger predators. Even deserts hosted the smallest, cleverest species. Their small size was an advantage. They needed less food. They could hide from danger. They could explore niches others could not. Resilience and adaptability were their true strengths. Predators circled. Competition stalked. Extremes of climate test every step. Dinosaurs survived. They thrived quietly, growing, evolving, experimenting. These first dinosaurs were seeds. Small creatures with enormous potential. What seemed unremarkable would one day dominate. From forests and rivers, deserts and coasts, they spread. Life quietly shifted toward a new era. The Triassic world watched. Dinosaurs were there, hidden among the survivors. Small, swift, cautious. Powerful in potential. The stage was set. A new age of giants would follow. The Earth had given life a chance. Dinosaurs took it, and though unseen by most, they were the future. Their story had just begun. The Triassic world was full of experiments. Life was exploring every possible shape and strategy. Reptiles were leading the way. Some were ancestors of modern crocodiles. Strong jaws, armored bodies, lurking in rivers and swamps, waiting patiently for prey. Fish, amphibians, small dinosaurs, nothing escaped. They were masters of ambush. Others were strangers, odd forms with unique adaptations. Some were built to glide. Some had spines or sails on their backs. Some developed long necks to reach high vegetation. Some ran on two legs, some on four. The diversity was staggering. The world was an open lab. Every niche was tested. Every climate challenged life. Deserts, rivers, and forests all provided a stage. Reptiles were pushing limits. They tried new ways to survive. Some became herbivores, grazing on ferns and cycads. Some became carnivores, hunting relentlessly in packs or alone. Some were small and agile. Others grew heavy and armored. The crocodile lineage was crucial. It survived predators. It survived droughts. It survived floods. Its body was perfect for endurance and patience. It carried the blueprint for millions of years of evolution. Other reptiles experimented boldly. They tried flight, gliding between trees, avoiding predators, reaching new food sources. They were nature's test subjects. Spines, frills, sails, every odd feature had a purpose. Thermoregulation, display, or intimidation. Some used them to attract mates, some to scare rivals, some to regulate heat under a harsh Sunday. The Triassic was a time of freedom. With dinosaurs small and humans far away, reptiles had room to innovate. Every new form explored a different strategy. Survival was the ultimate test. Some were temporary. They vanished within a few million years. Others thrived. Some descendants persist today. Crocodiles, turtles, snakes. Reptile experiments shaped ecosystems. Predators controlled prey. Herbivores shaped vegetation. Rivers, forests, and deserts all were affected. The balance of life depended on their trials. The odd shapes seemed strange, even comical at times. But each had a role. Each tested the limits of biology and the environment. They were the pioneers of the Mesozoic, testing what worked, discarding what failed. In rivers, swamps, and deserts, reptiles thrived. They were versatile. They were bold. They were the innovators of life. From tiny insect hunters to massive armored giants, they filled every corner of Pangaea. These experiments were not random. They followed the rules of survival and adaptation. Every mutation mattered. Every new trait had consequences. By the end of the Triassic, the groundwork was set. Dinosaurs were rising. Mammal ancestors were growing stronger. Crocodile relatives were perfected. And the strange, odd reptiles had left their mark. The stage was alive. Life was diverse, daring, and unpredictable. Every experiment mattered. Every form carried the seeds of the next age. The Triassic world had quiet corners, places where small creatures survived, hidden in the undergrowth, avoiding predators, avoiding heat, avoiding floods. These were the early mammal ancestors, tiny, furry, insect eaters. They scurried in shadows. They nibbled on bugs and seeds. They needed little, and that made all the difference. Life around them was loud and dangerous. Dinosaurs prowled the plains. Crocodile ancestors lurked in rivers. Giant reptiles hunted the skies. But the mammals stayed small, and they stayed safe. Their small size was an advantage. They could hide in leaf litter, slip into burrows, crawl into hollow logs. No predator could reach them easily. Night became their ally. When the world was dark, they moved, searching for insects, sniffing out seeds, learning the rhythms of the forest. Their teeth were sharp and precise, perfect for an insect diet. They chewed carefully, eating efficiently, wasting nothing. Life was a slow climb. Each generation adapted. Tiny improvements mattered. Sharper senses, better hearing, stronger limbs for climbing. These early mammals were patient survivors. They were not dominant. They were clever, always hiding, always moving, always learning. In the forest floor, they shaped their world. By eating insects, they controlled populations. By hiding in logs, they spread seeds and spores. They were small architects of the ecosystem. Predators tried to catch them. Some failed. Some succeeded. But the species endured. Generations passed quietly. These creatures laid the foundation for mammals to come, for creatures that would one day dominate the world. From tiny insect eaters to massive elephants, from the shadows to the sunday, their evolution was slow but unstoppable. Every challenge shaped them. Every predator taught them. Every season tested them. They were adaptable, flexible, resilient, traits that would define mammals forever. And while dinosaurs grew large and bold, mammal beginnings stayed subtle, unseen, underestimated, but ready, hidden in ferns, under leaves, behind logs. They were surviving the Triassic, small in size, big in potential. Every scurry, every night spent foraging, every narrow escape, all of it counted. These tiny creatures carried the future, the seeds of warm-blooded life, the blueprint of intelligence, the ancestors of every mammal that would follow. They remind us, size isn't power, persistence island, adaptation is a strength, and even the quietest creatures can shape the earth. The mammal story begins here, in shadows, in silence, with creatures smaller than your thumb, yet larger in importance than anyone could see. Pangaea was one world. All land is connected. No oceans to block life. Animals could roam freely. Plants could spread far and wide. This created something extraordinary, a living laboratory. Every ecosystem, every climate, every corner of the supercontinent became an experiment. Nature was testing itself. Small synapsids moved across forests. Reptiles roamed plains. Early dinosaurs explored river valleys. No barriers stopped them. They could reach new food sources. They could escape predators. They could find mates far from home. This freedom sped evolution. When species met, they competed. Competition forced change. Better runners survived. Better climbers survived. Smarter foragers survived. New traits spread quickly. Faster, stronger, more adaptable creatures thrived. The laboratory was relentless. Species that adapted thrived. Species that failed vanished. Rivers acted as highways. Floodplains became nurseries. Migrating animals crossed entire continents. Seeds floated downstream. Insects followed. Life flowed across Pangaea like blood through veins. Climate differences shaped evolution, too. Coasts were wet, lush, and green. Interior deserts were dry, harsh, and open. Species adapted to extremes. Some thrived near water. Others learned to survive with little. Isolated regions created pockets of innovation. A rift valley here. A mountain range is there. Populations separated by landforms slowly changed. New species emerged. A single supercontinent gave rise to countless new forms of life. Predators pushed prey to evolve. Prey pushed predators to evolve. A feedback loop of life. Every creature affected every other. Plants played a role too. Dense forests sheltered mammals. Seed ferns fed herbivores. Conifers shaped the soil and climate. Vegetation created new challenges. Life responded. Pangaea was chaotic, yet it was structured. Life moved along predictable corridors. Yet unpredictable mutations changed everything. The Triassic period was full of experiments. Nature tried countless designs. Some worked. Some failed. But every attempt left traces. From small mammals to early reptiles, from insects to amphibians, each species was part of the experiment. Adaptation became rapid. Evolution accelerated. This connected world was a teacher. It showed life how to survive extremes, how to adapt to rapid change, how to exploit empty niches. By the end of the Triassic, Pangaea had shaped the future. Dinosaurs were poised to dominate. Mammals had learned resilience. Insects and plants were diversified, all because the world had once been one. Pangaea was a single stage, a test lab of the Earth. Every shift in land, climate, or water drove evolution. Every life form carried lessons forward. The supercontinent taught survival. It taught adaptation. It taught the power of connectedness. And it set the blueprint for the modern world. In Pangaea's laboratory, life learned to innovate, to explore, to endure, to spread, and to prepare for the continents that would one day tear it apart. After the Great Dying, Pangaea was quiet. The world was scarred, yet life refused to vanish. Plants were the first to reclaim the land. Conifers returned to the valleys. Seed ferns pushed through barren soil. Cycads took root in warmer regions. Green began to spread again. Floodplains became carpets of vegetation. Rivers carried nutrients. Plants thrived along their banks. Life followed the greenery. Forests crept into hills and lowlands. Every valley offered shelter. Every plain offered food. Plants shaped the land as much as animals. Roots held soil in place. Leaves added nutrients when they fell. Plants built ecosystems from the ground up. Microbes, fungi, and insects moved in. Life spread outward, layer by layer. Green corridors connected distant regions. Animals travelled along these paths. Herbivores grazed on fresh shoots. Predators trailed them silently. Forests became highways of survival. Even deserts gained pockets of life. Drought-resistant species appeared. Small shrubs and hardy conifers survived. These islands of green offered refuge. Animals clustered around them. Vegetation controls climate locally. Shade cooled the soil. Evaporation added moisture to the air. Rivers swelled after the rains. Microclimates formed in valleys. Plants dictated which animals could thrive. Dense forests favoured small, agile creatures. Open plains favoured fast runners. Life adapted to the shapes that plants made. Fallen trees became homes. Rotting logs fed new growth. Seeds scattered by wind and water. Forests expanded slowly, steadily. Seasonal rains determined growth patterns. Flooded plains renewed nutrients. Dry seasons tested resilience. Plants that survived both became dominant. Life was still fragile, But plants ensured it had a chance. They were architects, sculptors, and keepers. Their roots held together a recovering world. Greenery also shaped evolution. Animals learned to climb, hide, and forage. Herbivores specialized in certain leaves or seeds. Predators developed tactics for dense cover. Over millions of years, forests expanded coast to coast. Green corridors stretched across rivers and hills. No land was untouched for long. Where plants thrived, animals followed. Pangaea's landscapes were transforming. Once barren valleys became forests. Deserts were punctuated with pockets of life. Floodplains turned into lush corridors. Plants were the unsung heroes. They rebuilt ecosystems from the ground up. They reshaped rivers, stabilized soil, and fed entire communities. Without them, life could not flourish. By reshaping landscapes, plants set the stage. They prepared the land for mammals, reptiles, and dinosaurs. They built the framework for the next chapter of evolution, and they showed that life, no matter how small, could reclaim the world. Pangaea was healing, one green leaf at a time, one forest at a time, and life was ready to follow. Pangaea was not static. The ground beneath it moved. Tectonic forces pressed upward. The supercontinent began to crack. First, faint lines appeared. Long rifts stretched across the land. Mountains pulled apart. Valleys began to sink. Water followed the lowest points. Streams pooled into lakes. Rivers carved new paths. Land was slowly reshaped. These cracks were small at first, hardly noticeable over a single human lifetime. But over millennia, the changes multiplied. Continents were quietly dividing. Rift valleys became the first signs of separation. Low basins formed where magma pressed upward. Volcanic activity sometimes accompanied the fractures. Ash and lava reshaped nearby terrain. Water collected in the depressions. Seasonal rains filled them. Lakes became permanent in some regions. Rivers cut deeper into the soft rock. These new waterways changed life immediately. Animals moved toward water. Herbivores grazed on newly green riverbanks. Predators followed silently. Vegetation adapted to the new landscapes. Plants thrived in floodplains. Hardy species appeared in drier zones. Life spread along every waterway. Rift valleys also created isolation. Species trapped in one basin could not cross easily. Over time, isolated populations diverged. New species slowly emerged. The early signs of future continents appeared. North and South America, Africa, and Europe were hinted at. Even Asia began to separate from the core. The blueprint of the modern world was quietly drawn. Some rifts are filled with water from Panthalassa. Narrow seas formed in long basins. These were the first steps toward the Atlantic Ocean. Other rifts remained lakes, slowly deepening. Volcanoes along rift zones altered climates locally. Ash clouds blocked sunlight. Lava flows destroyed forests temporarily, yet life always returned. The rifts influenced weather patterns. Mountains funneled winds. Rainfall shifted along valleys. Monsoons and seasonal storms adapted to the new topography. Animals responded to the changing geography. Small synapsids explored new corridors. Early reptiles discovered isolated niches. Dinosaurs began to spread across the recovering land. Rift valleys were more than cracks. They were engines of evolution. Isolation and connection coexisted. Life diversified in ways never possible on a single uninterrupted continent. For millions of years, the rifts widened. Some turned into seas. Others remained as rivers and lakes. The first hints of the Atlantic, Indian, and other oceans appeared. Pangaea's unity was ending. But in the breaking apart, life found opportunity. Every crack was a new pathway. Every valley is a new stage for evolution. The supercontinent was changing forever. From the first fissures, the modern world would slowly emerge. Lakes, rivers, and rift valleys told the story of a land in motion. Pangaea was beginning its long farewell. The rifts of Pangaea grew deeper. Land pulled apart slowly. Basins sank lower and lower. Water from Panthalassa began to creep in. At first, it was just small pools. Rainwater, rivers, and runoff are collected. But over time, ocean water followed. The edges of the seas met the first rift valleys. Narrow channels formed. Water filled long, low basins. Salt water mixed with fresh water from rivers. New coastal ecosystems emerged. These were the first new seas. They were small compared to the oceans today, but they marked a turning point. Pangaea was no longer entirely landlocked. Life reacted immediately. Marine organisms ventured into the rifts. Fish explored the new waters. Early mollusks and invertebrates colonized the basins. Land animals noticed the change. Shorelines created new hunting grounds. Amphibians thrived at the water's edge. Reptiles patrolled the new coasts. The water reshaped the land as it entered. Soft sediment was eroded by tides. River mouths shifted as seas advanced. Sand and silt spread across the edges. Salinity changed the chemistry. Some plants could not survive. Others adapted and thrived along brackish shores. Coastal vegetation grew where rivers met the sea. These narrow seas connected distant regions. Water corridors allowed species to disperse. Fish could travel further than before. Marine reptiles began exploring the expanding habitats. Volcanic activity near the rifts added drama. Magma reshaped coastlines. Ash and lava temporarily blocked the sunlight. Yet, life persisted in every new niche. The seas influenced the climate locally. Moisture from the water cooled nearby lands. Wind patterns shifted along the coast. Rainfall increased near the narrow oceans. Over time, the rift seas expanded. Some would become parts of the Atlantic Ocean. Others hinted at the early Indian Ocean. Pangaea's edges were slowly giving way to new oceans. Islands formed in some basins. Species became isolated there. Over generations, new adaptations appeared. Speciation accelerated in these confined waters. For millions of years, the process continued. Basins deepened. Seas spread wider. Life adapted to a world now divided between land and water. The narrow seas were both barrier and bridge. They separated some populations. They connected others. They reshaped ecosystems and evolution itself. Pangaea was still vast, but it was beginning to lose its unity. Water was claiming the first cracks. The supercontinent was slowly becoming many. Every new inlet and channel left its mark. Ancient rocks preserve evidence today. Fossils show marine life entering these early seas. The oceans were entering the rifts, and the earth was changing forever. The rifts of Pangaea deepened. Land masses began to separate. Populations that once roamed freely were cut off. A new world of isolation emerged. Islands appeared in the narrow seas. Some species stayed on one side of a rift. Others were trapped on newly formed land patches. Movement was limited. Isolation forced adaptation. Animals and plants faced new conditions. Desert patches appeared in some regions. Coastal zones became wetter elsewhere. Populations began to diverge. Small genetic differences became significant. Over generations, new traits were favored. Survival depended on responding to local challenges. Reptiles were quick to adapt. Some became more agile. Others grew bulkier, suited for plains. Early dinosaurs experimented with size and diet. Synapsids followed their own path. Small, efficient forms thrived. Hidden in forests and river valleys, they survived. Their descendants carried the seeds of mammals. Marine life felt isolated too. New basins created confined seas. Fish and mollusks adapted to local salinity and depth. Some species were completely cut off from others. Plants evolved in place. Coastal forests differed from inland greenery. Drought-resistant species thrived in isolated deserts. Seed dispersal became more challenging across the rifts. Isolation also created an opportunity. Vacant ecological niches emerged. Predators could dominate where prey was abundant. Herbivores flourished in unclaimed forests. Speciation accelerated. One population became two. Two became four. Over millions of years, the land exploded with diversity. The narrow seas acted like natural boundaries. Some species could cross, others could not. Geography dictated evolution. Mountains rising along rift edges added barriers. River systems shifted with the breaking land. Migration routes were severed. Life adapted in place. Volcanic activity intensified local change. Ash and lava reshaped habitats. Species had to cope with altered terrain. Those that adapted survived. Even insects felt the isolation. Pollinators became specific to certain plants. Swarming patterns shifted with local environments. Buzzing populations evolved differently from one valley to another. Over time, these isolated populations became new species. They looked different, behaved differently, occupied unique niches. Isolation was not permanent. Seas might expand, reconnecting some populations. Others remained divided indefinitely, but the changes were lasting. Pangaea's breakup created evolution's laboratory. Life is experimented on every isolated patch. Each corner of the supercontinent became a testing ground. Adaptation and survival wrote the future. By the end of this period, the Earth was teeming with diversity. Species bore the mark of isolation. They carried adaptations no other population had. Pangaea's fractures were now the engine of life's transformation. Isolation breeds change. It separates. It challenges. It creates new life. And the story of Pangaea shows just how powerful that force can be. The land was healing. Pangaea's fractures were spreading. Isolation had created an opportunity. Dinosaurs were ready. Small, agile, and adaptable. They had survived when others failed. Now they moved into empty spaces. Predators, herbivores, and scavengers alike. The deserts offered open plains. Swift, bipedal dinosaurs thrived there. Their long legs carried them across dunes. Their keen senses spotted prey from afar. River valleys teemed with life. Vegetation was dense and green. Herbivorous dinosaurs grazed along the floodplains. Predators lurked in the shadows. Coastal forests were a haven. Tall conifers and seed ferns shaded the ground. Dinosaurs adapted to climbing, hiding, or ambushing. Small species darted through the undergrowth. Rifts created isolated zones. Some species evolved independently. One valley might host a small herbivore, another unique predator. Competition drove evolution. Where one dinosaur thrived, another adapted. New feeding strategies appeared. Some became omnivores, others specialized. The Triassic skies carried new sounds. Screeches, calls, and the rustle of scales. Dinosaurs were establishing dominance. Their influence grew with every generation. The rivers shaped life. Floodplains became highways for migration. Dinosaurs spread across vast distances. Population density increased in fertile regions. Small mammals and synapsids avoided direct competition. They remained in the shadows, hidden in the undergrowth. Dinosaurs ruled the open lands. Climate contrasts added challenges. Dry interiors required endurance. Coastal rains offered abundance. Dinosaurs adapted to every environment. Even marine reptiles felt the shift. They hunted along coastlines. Dinosaurs on land set new ecological rules. Life on Earth was transforming. Isolation fueled diversity. Valleys, deserts, and coasts each hosted unique species. Adaptation accelerated. Dinosaurs experimented with speed, size, and diet. Some grew larger. Muscles strengthened. Legs lengthened. Their presence reshaped food chains. Predatory tactics became refined. Ambushes, pursuit, and pack strategies emerged. Hunting skills adapted to new prey. Ecosystems responded in turn. Herbivores developed defenses, armor, speed, and group behavior. Plants shaped their evolution. Thorns and toxins appeared. Dinosaurs were no longer minor players. They dominated landscapes. Their numbers grew. Their potential stretched across continents. Pangaea's breakup had begun. New continents were forming. Dinosaurs would follow. They were prepared for change. The stage was set for the Mesozoic. Dinosaurs were the new rulers. Their rise was inevitable, adaptable, diverse, and unstoppable. Life had seized the moment, from small beginnings to ecological giants. Pangaea's fractures fueled evolution. Dinosaurs took advantage, and the world would never be the same. The dinosaurs were rising. They dominated the land. But mammals were still here. Small, quiet, resilient. Most went unnoticed. They scurried through the undergrowth, slipped into burrows, hid in the shadows of towering reptiles. Night was their ally. While dinosaurs ruled the day, mammals moved in the darkness. Insects and seeds became their food. Water from rivers and puddles sustained them. Survival was their strategy. Small size meant less food. Quick reflexes kept them alive. Clever minds solved problems. Forests offered cover. Dense conifers and cycads hid them from predators. Seed ferns provided nutrition. Roots and fallen leaves gave shelter. Rivers shaped their lives. Floodplains teemed with insects. Mammals followed the currents. Migration routes were quiet, hidden paths. Isolation helped. Fractured valleys created pockets of safety. Species evolved independently. Some adapted to deserts. Others thrived near coasts. Life was harsh. Droughts tested endurance. Heat and cold forced adaptation. Only the clever and cautious survived. Reproduction was key. Small litters, high care for young, hidden nests protected offspring. Patience and persistence mattered. Competition was constant. Dinosaurs hunted the land. Mammals avoided conflict. They fed on overlooked resources. Adaptation was slow but steady. Some mammals became more agile. Others developed better senses. Night vision, smell, and hearing sharpened. They shaped the ecosystem quietly. Insects controlled populations. Seeds spread. Soil enriched. Mammals played their part. The forests changed. Conifers and ferns grew back after extinctions. Mammals moved with them. New plants meant new opportunities. Across Pangaea, life continued. Dinosaurs took open spaces. Mammals held to the margins. Patience was their advantage. Time worked in their favor. Millions of years of quiet survival. Extinction events passed. Mammals endured. They were the seed of the future. Small, adaptable, and intelligent. Their descendants would rise later. Dinosaurs would dominate first, but the mammal lineage was unbroken. Hidden in the shadows, in soil and trees, waiting for the moment to expand. Persistence was their power. Mammals shaped distant futures. They survived deserts and forests, monsoons and droughts. The quiet creatures that endured would inherit the earth. Pangaea was changing. Rifts formed. Oceans spread. Dinosaurs roamed widely. Mammals stayed steady. They were subtle but essential. Life on Earth required their presence. The tiny survivors would carry the memory of Pangaea, and their time would come. The story of mammals was patience. Quiet, hidden, persistent. Survival was their triumph. The distant future awaited them. Pangaea is gone, but its mark remains. Its story is written in stone. Mountains tell the tale. The Appalachians in North America, the Urals in Russia, the Atlas in Africa. Once joined, now split. Their roots trace back to collisions. When continents crashed together, mountains rose. Their scars remain. Fossils speak too. Creatures that once roamed freely. Bones scattered across continents, now separated by oceans. Early reptiles. Small synapsids. Primitive dinosaurs. Even insects. They left traces in the rocks. Footprints frozen in stone. Evidence of a world united. Oceans still carry Pangaea's memory. Currents flow along paths, first shaped by its breakup. The Atlantic slowly widening. The Indian Ocean forming. Patterns of water movement dictated by long-gone land bridges. Monsoon winds. Rainfall cycles. All is influenced by the shape of the continents. Even today, the climate whispers of Pangaea's past. Deserts owe part of their existence to Pangaea. Vast interiors that baked under the sunday. Extreme dry zones. They shaped life to endure scarcity. Drought-resistant plants. Animals adapted to heat. The memory of those conditions lingers in modern ecosystems. Rivers still echo their flow. Sediments carried across unified land masses. Floodplains once fed countless creatures. Today's rivers follow paths carved in part by Pangaea's rivers. Its network of life corridors shaped evolution. Life itself remembers. Mammals descended from small survivors. Dinosaurs spread from the supercontinent's freedom. Plants adapted to deserts and coasts. The legacy is genetic, ecological, and geological. Even our own bodies carry echoes. Bones. DNA. Lineages stretching back. We walk on the floor of a planet once whole. Our world is shaped by a supercontinent that allowed life to flourish. Maps tell the story too. Continents fit together like puzzle pieces. South America and Africa. Europe and North America. Fossils, mountains, and sediments confirm the link. The Earth has memory. It never forgets its past. Pangaea was not just land. It was a crucible, a giant stage for evolution, a laboratory where species adapted, survived, and spread. Its influence reaches beyond its time. It shaped oceans, climates, and ecosystems. The fingerprints are everywhere. To understand Earth today, we look back. The currents, the mountains, the fossils. They all tell the story. A story of unity and division, creation and destruction, endurance and change. Pangaea may have vanished, but its echoes remain. In every mountain range, in every ocean current, in every living lineage that traces its roots to that ancient world. The supercontinent is history, yet its influence continues, shaping our planet, shaping life, shaping us. Pangaea's legacy is permanent, a single world, broken, but never forgotten. We've travelled far, across time, across a world that no longer exists. Pangaea, the supercontinent that once held all life together. Though it is gone, it's not forgotten. Its presence lingers in every mountain range, every ocean current. Every fossil is buried in stone. It is still shaping the planet beneath our feet. Think about it. The winds that sweep the continents, the rivers that carve the land, the animals and plants we see today, all of them carry echoes of Pangaea, a memory written deep into Earth's systems. Life adapted to one land mass. It spread, survived, and evolved. Dinosaurs roamed. Small synapsids hid in forests. Insects filled the air. Plants pushed across deserts and coasts. All because there was a single, connected stage. A world without borders. When Pangaea began to break, life changed too. Rifts formed. Oceans crept in. Species divided. Isolation brought evolution. New creatures emerged. New ecosystems grew. Even as the supercontinent vanished, its influence persisted. Every mountain, every river, every current tells its story. The Appalachian Mountains, the Sahara Sands, the Atlantic Ocean is widening, all shaped by forces from that ancient world. And we are part of this story too. Our very existence owes something to the patterns Pangaea created. The land that allowed life to survive the greatest extinction, the rivers and forests that guided early mammals, the deserts that honed resilience, the climate and winds forced adaptation. Pangaea reminds us of change. Nothing on Earth is permanent. Land shifts, oceans move, life adapts, but within change there is continuity, a thread that links the past to the present. So, when you look at the map today, when you feel the wind on your face, when you study fossils or watch wildlife, remember this: we walk a world still shaped by a supercontinent long gone. The Earth keeps moving, and its history moves with it. Pangaea was more than land. It was a teacher, a reminder that even when worlds break apart, their legacy lives on. It shaped life. It shaped the climate. It shaped our planet. So, let this be a moment to pause. Reflect on the vastness of time, the power of Earth, the resilience of life, the echoes of one world that still guide us. If you've enjoyed this journey through deep time, don't forget to subscribe. More stories of Earth, evolution, and the hidden past are waiting. Hit the bell to stay connected. Pangaea is gone, but its voice still whispers. Its story still guides, and the echo of one Earth will always be with us.